At this juncture, when general studies goes on to be having almost 1200 marks, and options going to be carrying 500 marks, it may go on to dwell on any candidate that options are not going to be too significant. Now, why is it that they can go on to think in such a manner that will going to defy any imagination and any logic? For a simple reason that even 1 mark is going to be enough for civil services examination. So much so that within a bracket of 5 marks, there can be so many types of services which will be getting redistributed of sorts. So every mark goes on to be counting in this region, and not to speak of 500 marks which goes on to be associated with the optionals. 500 marks are no few marks that can be left alone or that can be looked to be casual in. They are good number of marks and options are always going to be a better option in the sense of preparation of examination, largely because while general studies goes on to be very, very open-ended in the sense that is one topic may go on to comprise some part of polity, some part of economy, some part of geography, some part of science and technology. In options, the dimensions of the topic are much more easily defined. This is not the case in general studies. That's why there is a case for optional. One must go on to study optional, and it is much more easier to prepare an optional subject in comparison to that of the preparation of general studies. So as we said, there is the questions in general studies are very, very open-ended, and they are not going to be easy to prepare from end to end. While in an optional subject, it is much more easy to prepare from end to end, largely because the dimensions of the topic are defined, the components of the topic are defined, the structure of the topic also can be defined. In an optional, the other advantage is that the answers can be crisp and they can be made to be high scoring. When we say that the answers are going to be crisp, it basically means that there is not going to be too much amount of analysis that is going to be involved in an option. And because they are not going to be too much amount of analysis comprising of international relations, maybe internal security, maybe a variety of components that are going to be involved, the answers are point to point. They can be made to be short, they can be made to be precise, and they can be made to be very, very crisp as well. In future, the options will go on to play a much bigger role in marks allocation, largely because as general studies starts getting itself complicated, and there is a distinct possibility that general studies will go on to change its nature, it will go on to change its form, and is bound to get itself more and more complicated of sorts. The reason is most of the questions are going to be very, very open-ended, they are going to be interdisciplinary, they are going to be interdisciplinary. So even if it is that a question in economy, Indian economy is going to be asked in general studies on inflation, then it's possible that the UPSC may go on to ask all the type of international events taking place, which will go on to be a main determinant in the inflationary spirals taking place in the country. So options will go on to be much more significant because they will be easy to score, they will be crisp to score, and also they will be easy to prepare as well. Sixth is, there are going to be 6 optionals of social sciences, more popular options of social sciences. One is geography, another is public administration, history, political science, economics, and sociology. All of these options go on to contribute as much to essay as any other component of general studies goes on to be contributing. Now, their contribution to essay is going to be far more significant, largely because when someone goes into prepare the options, they go on to prepare it in depth. It's not like general studies where the preparation is going to be sometimes, not always, but sometimes goes on to be at a surface level. Options in any case will be there and to test the depth and knowledge analysis. So it will be a wishful thinking to think that options are going to be weaned away from the UPSC syllabus. Of course, as and when the options are going to be taken away from this from UPSC, that will be a different time, that will be seen in a different perspective altogether. But if there are options that are going to be there, then one of the first questions that a candidate goes on to be confronting is how to choose an optional. The choice of the optional to begin with shouldn't ever be based on anyone's advice or a hearsay or a peer group pressure. In general, this is the modus operandi that is generally going to be followed. That is, students go on to take an optional only because they have been advised once by some senior person, maybe advised by some peer group, and maybe that they are under so much amount of pressure because their group has taken one optional, so they also want to pick up the same option. The basics of choosing an optional has to be based on certain sound principles, and that can be, there are certain cardinal principles that must be applied in the choice of the optional. One of them is indeed the result of that optional. If some of these options have been giving a not so good result, there must be a reason. The UPSC knows it better. No one knows it better than Union Public Service Commission. So result means there is how many students and the proportion of the students who happen to be qualifying from that optional. This is what is meant by the result of the UPSC. And when we say that the result of that optional goes on to matter, it basically means how many students and the proportion of the students who have been selected from that. The second principle is how much amount of help that the optional goes on to give in general studies. In general, some of the options like political science, like geography, like Indian economy, like economics, like sociology, they have, and history as well, they have a major role to play in aiding general studies. So if one is taking, let's say, philosophy, if one is taking something like literature subjects, then they are not going to be getting any type of a help in preparation of the general studies. Now this is one aspect that must be thought of while choosing any type of an optional. And there are 5 or 6 options within which goes on to be having a higher degree of connectivity with the general studies subjects. The third component in this case has to be whether the option that the candidate is picking up was a subject in graduation as a discipline or not. Normally, these things don't go on to matter at the UPSC level. But supposing they happen to be from a very good college, from a very good university, then all of those things that have been taught to them in their college is always going to be counting on. And if they're going to be starting afresh, then that may go on to create a problem in comprehending the basics of the subject. While there is no hard and fast rule with respect to the qualification of a candidate who has gone on to have a graduation subject and then he went on to have the same subject in the UPSC, and the correlationship is not going to be very, very clean and clear as well. But in general, if someone has studied a subject in the graduation, that goes on to form a sound base on the basis of which one can go on to pick up an option. The fourth is thinking process of the candidate, whether it is logical, analytical or descriptive. Now, in general, a student of history will go on to have a very descriptive bend of thinking. It will be having a very descriptive process of thinking. It may go on to be analytical sometime or may not go on to be so. Logical thinking is generally going to be associated with the students of sciences. And when we are going to say that science students will go on to have a logical thinking, it's the way that they have been trained in the study of their subject. Analytical thinking can go on to be a part of an attitude. It may be or may not be a part of an attitude, but if anyone who has a logical bend of mind, for them, the one subject that will be suggested will be geography. Anyone who has a more analytical bend of mind, it can be geography, it can be history, it can be sociology. Anyone who goes into having a more descriptive bend of mind will be generally suggested with history. The fifth is language and expression of the candidate. Now, there are some subjects where language and expression of the candidate is what is tested, not exactly that their knowledge, their information level is tested. For example, one phenomena can be expressed in 5 different ways. Expression of it will go on to be requiring a role of a language. That means unless the candidate has a language, there is no way that they will be able to express it either as well. Now, when we are going to be talking about language and expression, then these things go on to matter a lot in certain subjects like that of sociology, like that of history. While in the second paper of geography, language and expression will go on to matter, and only in something like some 60% of the syllabus. But in history, it goes on to play a phenomenal role. anyone who hasn't got a very good language and expressive capacity should never go on to pick up sociology or history type of subjects. The sixth is associated with the contemporaneity of the subject or the contemporary nature of the subject. That is, if the candidate is able to understand a lot of things by the study of a newspaper, from the magazines and from other aspects, then this candidate is very fit to pick up a certain subjects like sociology, one of them, economics definitely, and geography. For the purpose of history, you don't require an attitude that will go on to help you to be contemporary in nature. So contemporaneity is something that helps a candidate to revise the subtopic and the subject almost every day. It's like when you go on to have a rainfall, then you are revising geography. When you go on to be having some amount of disturbance between Indo-Pakistan relationship, you are revising international relationship. When you are going to be having a stock exchange plummeting to its depth, then you are going to be revising yourself with economy. And when you are going to be having someone talking about cohabitation, then you are revising sociology. There is no way that anyone goes on to be revising history in that manner at all. The seventh is the sense of observation and its development. A good number of answers can be written only on the basis of sense of observation. A topic like urban problems can be easily written only on the basis of sense of observation and nothing is required. When we say that a topic like urban problems can be written only on the basis of sense of observation, it's like this is a topic, can be in sociology, it can be in geography, it can be partly in some type of urban issues as well. Normally, in normal condition, a candidate will have to study something like some 6 or 7 books to come to know about what are the problems of Bengaluru, what are the problems of Mumbai or Delhi for that matter. But one who has taken a metro route for 6 or 7 times, maybe moved in the local buses to Mumbai some 6-7 times, they will be always able to write what are the problems that they faced in the course of their commuting from one place to another place. And with this sense of observation, with the type of people they have interacted with, they can always go on to write a topic on urban problems. The eighth is going to be whether it is going to be theoretical, whether the subject is theoretical, and whether it has a theoretical disposition or not. Now, if the subject is theoretical, then it may go on to suit some people who are finding it difficult to adapt, and who will go on to find it in general difficult to explain about its adaptability. If the subject is very, very applicable, like some portions of sociology and some portions of geography as well, then such type of theoretical disposition will not go on to help. But in general, in one section of political science, like thinkers, the same thing is going to be also in sociology, thinkers, is the theoretical disposition that goes on to be pretty significant. Now, having said all of these things, the one component that goes on to be of maximum significance in choosing an option is going to be interest. If you have interest, forget about everything else. That you must go on to choose that option where you are interested in. Largely because if you have interest, then you will go on to have a better insight in the subject, you will keep on thinking about it, you will invest your thinking into that subject, and you will keep on dreaming about that subject. So, the most important component and the most important yardstick for choosing an option is always going to be interest, interest, and interest. So, when the candidates start choosing an option, they must go on to understand there is no option that is good or bad. Any option that is said to be good or any option that is said to be bad is essentially imbibed in the minds of the candidates. Or essentially it is a product of an hearsay or a rumor, or essentially it's a product of what is prevalent in this so-called market. We call it market because the students don't prefer to call it as a campus. So to begin with, there is no option that is good or bad. Every option is good. It's only that some of the candidates who go on to be doing good in some subject, they make the option very, very good of sorts. And that has been the case throughout. That has been the history of UPSC. That is, one candidate at one point of time went on to top the examination with a subject. It doesn't make the subject good or bad. It's the candidate who was so good that he has been or she has been able to top the subject. Now, while thinking about picking up a geography as an option, then the selection should not be ever based on herd mentality and rumors. Never ever. For that matter, no other option. Forget about geography. It can be anything else. The basic nature of geography is that geography is dynamic in nature. It's always changing. And when we say it's dynamic in nature, it's largely because it's semi-scientific in nature. There are a lot of discoveries of sciences that go to get incorporated in geography. Second is there's going to be one paper, that is the second paper, where every day the government policy is changing, the analysis is changing, the landscape is changing, and then there is one section that is human geography, and in human geography one migration stream that has taken place last year that has changed the entire complexion of the migration landscape of the whole of the world. So it's dynamic in nature. Environment is dynamic in nature, so environmental geography is changing. Biogeography is dynamic in nature, so that is changing. Climate is dynamic in nature, so climate is changing. And its dynamic nature means that not only that the subject is changing, but the approach towards the study of the subject is also changing as well. Second nature of geography is that geography is naturally logical and a scoring subject. Because it is logical, you can derive to a conclusion step by step. It's very much on the lines of mathematics or any type of a science subject. It's like when the air is heated, the air will rise. If the air rises, it will go to get cooled. If the air goes on to get cooled, it will go to condense. And as the air goes on to condense, it will go into rain. Now this sequence cannot be changed. This sequence is derived out of logic. So that's the reason that geography is going to be scoring subject, because if somewhere something is going to be asked about the nature of rainfall and how is it that a rising air will go on to give to rainfall, then there is no power on the earth that can go on to change this sequence at all. The third part is physical geography follows a logical sequence, and thus it is easy to remember and comprehend. Just now we talked about this factor, that air which is heated, as the air goes on to get heated, it rises. As it rises, it goes on to expand. As it goes on to expand, it goes on to get itself cooled. As it goes on to get itself cooled, it leads to formation of a cloud. And as it leads to formation of a cloud, it goes on to lead to rainfall. Now this is a logical sequence. And once anyone understands this sequence, anyone is able to imagine this sequence, then their problem with respect to the topic is solved forever. They will never go to forget it. That's the reason that geography is very, very easy to comprehend. The fourth is the subject can be revised every day from everything. The subject can be revised every day from the rainfall, from the weather, from the people, from the newspaper. The subject deals with its own environment, which can go on to be related to everything else. So geography that way goes on to be agglomerative. Agglomerative, that means it goes on to comprise a variety of components which can be imbibed within the framework of any type of an event. So if climate, if everyday weather is going to be changing, then a candidate can go on to understand and easily correlate certain things like thunderstorm, lightning, winds, and maybe the traffic problem that goes on to be ensuing associated with it. Geography is also going to be correlative learning. That means you're going to correlate a lot of factors, and you're going to correlate it because there's nothing that goes on to define geography specifically. This ensemble is not only for IAS examination, it is going to be in the nature of the subject. Correlative nature of geography is one component, it's agglomerative is going to be one component, it's a mixture of different subjects that is going to be another component, and that is why we're going to call that this is a subject that is an ensemble of many type of subjects combined together. The fifth is it incorporates an ensemble of subjects, and thus it is going to be interdisciplinary and interdisciplinary in nature, meaning that the amount of an effort that is required to be done in this case is greatly reduced. How? Anyone who has a bent of mind for study social sciences, let's say sociology, will be able to involve sociology in geography. Anyone who has a bent of mind to study something like physics, they will be able to involve physics in it. Anyone who have a bent of mind of studying economics, they will be also able to involve economics in it. It's a simple equation like China is building a corridor linking Xinjiang with that of Gilgit-Baltistan range, with that of the Karakoram region. Now that goes on to be having an economic overtone. The difficulties associated with the construction of that corridor has a geographical tone, geological tone, climatic tone, while the entire intent associated with it goes on to be having a relationship with international relations. It's like, another example can be, if the cotton textile industry has, or the sugar industry has shifted from Gangetic Plains to Maharashtra, then it's not only because of geographical factors like climate. It is also because there is a very good Jila Parishad, Shetkari Sangatans of South, say in Maharashtra. We go on to collect sugarcane in a very institutionalized manner, and that is the way that they go to deliver it to the sugar mills. That's one factor. Climatic factor is always going to be involved in this case in the form of that sucrose content in the sugarcane goes on to increase because of sea breeze. There is a third factor as well. That is the use of bagasse in this case is always going to be helpful for the purpose of ministerial plants. There is a fourth component as well. There is a bagasse, molasses, all of them combine to have led to the development of a brewery industry as also in this place. So that goes on to involve economies of agglomeration as well. So geography is going to be very interdisciplinary, and consequently it is going to be pretty interesting as well. Interesting means because it involves a lot of components which go on to be touching the framework of other subjects. The study of geography involves both understanding and memorization skills, but it goes on to be less memorization and more conceptual and imaginative in nature, more analytical in nature. It used to be memorization, it used to be considered and it used to be perceived as a subject that was based on memorization, but it is no more right now, because the questions, not only the questions that are asked are going to be analytical in nature, but also the way geography has to be approached is also going to be very, very different. Seventh factor is questions from the map are very straightforward, and hence it is very, very easy to score. And we're going to pick up one more factor that is very significant. That is, if anyone is going to be picking up geography and they are studying geography, they are answering questions in geography, they will be able to camouflage a lot of their demerits. Geography involves a drawing of certain diagrams. Now think of it, that is, if you don't have a very good language, you will be able to draw some diagrams. Diagrams will be able to camouflage your language. Second is, geography is scientific. So if you don't have a very good language, you can go on to use an expression like air rises, expands, then cools, then leads to formation of cloud, and then rains. You don't have to use a complete sentence, that is, the air rises consequent upon the heating, localized heating of the surface, which leads to the evolution of thermals. These thermals, as they go on to increase in their size, the volume per unit, the amount of energy content per unit goes on to decrease. That allows it to become cool, and because it has been cool at cooling at a rate of 9 degrees centigrade per kilometer, it will go on to lead to formation of clouds. It is these clouds that will go on to develop into form of a thunderstorm and may go on to lead to rainfall. So instead of using this entire of the sentence, anyone from geography will be easily able to use a telegraphic language of sorts, and consequently still going to score. Geography goes on to be highly helpful in general studies, and so significant for PT and mains as well, both of them, in the sense that, barring this year, for example, in general, something like some 20-25 questions have been asked in geography every year. That's one. And if you're going to pick up the first paper of general studies rather, then in general studies, something like some last 10 questions or 13 questions are kept only for geography. There is no way that anyone can go to leave it. Having studied geography, it goes to become very, very easy to answer those last 10 to 12 questions on that are going to be asked on that. Then once someone has gone on to become an ICE officer, then you can't imagine the amount of help that you will going to get from geography. I do going to be having good number of students who have been posted in some rural areas, and sometimes they have come out with this notion, they have come out with this information to me that the NPK ratio in some of these districts of Haryana has gone to become reverse, or they have gone to become extremes of sorts. Now, normally the recommended NPK ratio, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, potash ratio, is 4:2:1, and they went on to gather this information that in some places the NPK ratio has been 34:4:1. Now that went on to alarm them. Now they were able to understand it and comprehend the situation. Largely they were students of geography. So even if you go on to become an administrative servant, you're going to join administrative services, then even you're going to move in an urban area and you will be able to comprehend what are the problems that an urban area is going to be facing, and you will be able to give some type of a suggestion as to how is it that these urban areas can be improved as well. This is largely on the basis of the knowledge that you have gained with respect to geography. And ultimately your performance being in administrative service will go on to count a lot, because it is on the basis of this performance that will go on to get better postings as well. The preparation of the subject has to always go from building of the basics of the subject. Without a basic, the preparation of an option will go on to become a very, very, very difficult proposition, because the level at which the classes has to be taken, or the level at which the students have to study, is going to be very, very high. And if they don't have a basics to fall on, basics means in this case, that is they shouldn't be found wanting in trying to answer 10th class and 12th class questions answer. They shouldn't be. If they have a problem in these cases, then they will definitely go on to find problems with any type of classes taking place anywhere in the world. So the first part must be building of the basics and the foundation. Now, how is it that these basics can be built up, and how is it that the foundation can be strengthened? The first part is revisiting their school books. Now, when we are talking about school books, we are not referring to any book. We are referring to only those books that the candidates have studied during the time of their school. They may be NCERT books, they may not be NCERT books. Now, why we suggest is because pedagogically, psychologically speaking, if a candidate goes on to revisit the same book that they have studied in your school the second time, then their grasping of that topic, their ability to remember those topics, and their ability to frame a mental map about different chapters will be very, very, very different. It will be lightning fast. Do it once and you're going to realize the significance of it. And this is something that has been experimented with in the whole of the world. And it will be also the case in India as well. It's a different matter that students go on to abandon all their school books and then go on to pick up a new NCERT book. Of course, NCERT can be significant. Sometimes they are significant. They're going to touch a good amount of chord with their students. But then there are going to be good number of books that are going to be even better than NCERT, and some of these books that the students can go on to lay their hands on, which they have studied in their school books, they can go on to be wonderful for their preparation overall. Second is, it is always advisable and also advisable that the students must go on to prepare for their general studies PT. Meaning that when they by and large prepared for the preliminary examination, then they are in a position to pick up some of this higher level analysis as well. And once they have known this topic, then they will be able to understand and comprehend even difficult topics as well. And then practice some objective questions also, which can go on to be associated with a preliminary examination. And the fourth part will be associated with development of an imagination to a reasonable degree. And when we go on to say development of imagination to a reasonable degree, it basically means that there are certain subjects which may not go on to require an imagination. For example, history. For example, sociology. In history, when you're going to be talking about the Mughal rule, you don't go to imagine that what was the personality of Akbar, he had mustache or not, which he was having a beard or not, and then his hair was long and flowing or not, or was he a bald person. But while you go on to imagine a tropical cyclone, you're going to imagine a black color soil, you're going to imagine an urban problem, you're going to imagine a CBD central business district, you're going to imagine a beach, you have to imagine it. You have to imagine it in all its entity. The more you're going to imagine, the better it is going to be for the purpose of your concept. That's the first thing that the students must go on to do. The second is that they can go on to pick up a self-study as a medium, or they can go on to pick up coaching as a medium for preparation. Of course, we imagine that all of these candidates who are listening to it and who are hearing these things and who are trying to understand what we are saying, they have picked up a coaching as a medium of preparation. It's not a face-to-face class that we can go to say that mentoring is the best medium of preparation. In this case, it can only be coaching and only coaching, nothing else in this case. Coaching as a medium some time back used to be the last resort in preparation, and now it is the first. Why it used to be the last resort in preparation was because some time back it used to be looked down upon. That was one. Second was that a good number of candidates used to prepare coaching, used to go for coaching only when they have studied the subject comprehensively, so that they go on to get the finer touches of it. The third was that, of course, they were not going to be very good coaches, and there was not so much amount of proliferation of coaches that used to be right now. And there are going to be a good number of people who have gone to get themselves specialized in certain things as well. So, some time back it was the last resort. Now what the students are going to do is that when they are going to land in any place, be it Delhi, Chennai, Hyderabad, Patna, Allahabad, Lucknow, any of these centers, the first thing that they are going to do is that they join a coaching institute. Coaching is like looking for an answer to a mathematical solution without having solved it. Sometimes it can be good. It may have certain type of difficulties in here and there, but then generally it does go on to aid the students to solve their problems. It's almost like coaching is almost like resorting to antibiotics without having a preventive medicine as well. In the sense that is, it will go on to cure you. It has a possibility and a probability of curing you with a good amount of disease, and without actually doing too much amount of hard work. It's like when you're going to having a throat problem, then when you're going to gargle or when you're going to have a vapor inhalation, it may go to take 6-7 days of a time. But with one antibiotic, it can go to be a matter of just one single night as well. That is what exactly coaching goes on to do to you. Then coaching is a good medium because, first, it defines the territory for the candidates. It defines how much they have to study. It defines how much they have to study and from where they have to study. Now, this is not going to be complete because ultimately the students will go on to themselves develop an analytical capability. The students themselves will have to develop a certain type of capabilities to correlate the topics. But then for a topic like humidity, for example, a coaching institute will go on to let you know that with respect to coaching with respect to topic, you require to know what is humidity, what are the types of humidity, how is it measured, then what is the source of humidity, what is meant by condensation, what are the forms of condensation. Any student who is preparing himself or herself on the basis of self-study, it may take a complete day for them to understand that these are the type of components that is going to be required. But then, in coaching, you're going to get it to know only in about 1.5 or 2 hours of a time. That's what we say. It defines the territory for the candidates. Second is, it teaches the candidates at least something on every topic, whether good or bad quality. That means if a candidate goes on to study a topic like that of, let's say, urban governance, then a coaching institute will go on to let them know maybe one component. At least they have let them know something. Maybe that urban governance will go on to comprise of the meaning of urban governance, the history of urban governance, the components of urban governance, that is flood governance, crime governance, competition management, constituency management, and so on and so forth. A coaching institute may go to end up letting them know only what is urban governance, but then they have known something. So it's better to know something rather than knowing nothing at all. And maybe later on the candidates themselves going to develop certain type of a capability, but that they are able to know what are all the topics that they can go to incorporate it as a part of it. Now that is where you can go to differentiate an institute from a coaching. So of course, when you're going to be part of the institute goes to make it sure that they have a complete accountability of yours. And if they are talking about urban governance, then they will go to pick up every single component of urban governance and absolve the student of any responsibility of looking for any material or attending any type of a lecture anywhere in the world. The third advantage of coaching institute in this case can go to be, it forces the candidates to study in the class for 3 to 4 hours. That's a practice. That's a good practice. Generally, all the students who go on to come to the coaching institutes, they have come after +2, +3 as well. And in the colleges, the periods are not going to be as extensive as 3 to 4 hours. When the students are made to sit for 3 to 4 hours in the class, they start developing a practice. And that is going to be very, very helpful to them in the examination. Moreover, the fourth advantage is that the students to an extent learn how to study, how much to study, what to study, and most importantly, what not to study. That is something that the coaching institute goes on to do to the candidates. That is, when we are going to be talking about how to study, that means, is it that they should go on to put an emphasis on the cause of a phenomena, or on the conclusion of the phenomena, or the impact of the phenomena? What to study, that means there is a maze of information that is going to be available either offline or online. Maybe the coaching institute is going to help them that this is the one that you can go to pick it up. Maybe that they are going to be certain things that are going to be better than that, but still this is something that the coaching institute is going to help you. What not to study, for example, if someone is going to be studying investment model, then they may not have to study certain things like that of Friedman's model, or certain things like Berger's model, and so on. And when they go to study on their own, they may go on to bump into studying some of these type of topics, and which after some time they will go come to realize that they are not, that's the topic that is not going to be required for them to study at all. Then certain type of coaching institutes go on to help in a different manner as well. What coaching institutes also going to do is that they are going to prepare a circumstance or a condition around which the candidates career go on to evolve. All the serious candidates do go on to become very, very sincere, and for any serious candidate, coaching is going to be a real boon. For anyone who is not interested in studies, whether they are part of coaching institute or they are part of not coaching institute, they are preparing themselves or not, or they have come here for anything else, it doesn't matter for them at all. Now, having said that coaching is going to be good, it doesn't going to mean that someone is going to be forcing you to be necessarily a part of the coaching institute, or you should go on to join it. Self-preparation can equally be a good method of preparation because of the independence of preparation, independence of approach, and freedom to think and learn. There are going to be a good number of candidates who will never going to join it, and still they are going to qualify for the examination, although they may have taken help from some of the notes of the coaching institutes from here, there, and anywhere. The basic of self-preparation is building the basics in the foundation of the subject. And the best way to build the basics is through, again, revisiting the school books, the same school book that the candidate have studied, prepare for their preliminary examination section before they commence for their mains examination. The third, develop their imaginative power and intuitive power. And then thereafter, collect this material and start studying and going through them systematically. However, the biggest problem with self-preparation is that you end up wasting some amount of time and finding a good, authentic and appropriate matter to start with. This may be a problem if the candidate has not been guided too well. The students do not know how much importance they should give to any topic. What is the actual demand of UPSC? What the students can go into? How much the level that the student can go to raise to cater to the demand? And at present, the biggest problem faced by the students in the whole of the world is that they are flooded with material, and good amount of material is going to be spurious in nature. The net is flooded with material, the market is flooded with material. Which one is to be followed may not be rightly judged by the student. It is for this reason that they need a true guide. Coaching institutes may not going to provide them with a mentor. They can go to provide only with a coach. And coach has some limited capabilities. Mentoring can be done only face to face. It cannot be done through certain type of a remote sensing like what we are doing it right now. A mentor is someone who can go to actually mold the candidate completely by taking into account his merits and demerits. A coach goes on to be teaching him with a topic. Maybe he makes him specialize in one or two of these type of topics. So, the conclusion in this case is that there are two methods: self-preparation as well as joining any type of an institute or picking up the help of a guide. Now, this brings us now to how to choose books for civil services. Choosing books and the ability to make a choice of what to read, what to study, and when to study is a difficult proposition. In the choice of books, certain don'ts need to be always followed. We'll talk about how is it that you can go to choose a book, but we are also going to talk about how is it that you should never go to choose a book. First is, do not always follow what other people, your peer group, your seniors say. The reason is, you never know under what context they may have said so. The reason why we say is so because what may be an easy reading for them may not be so for you at all. They may be a student at the mains level while you may be studying at the beginners level. Recommendation of a science student may not be good for a social science student. A recommendation of a highly intuitive student may not go well with a logical mind. Recommendation of a very hard working student may not go on to do well for intelligent student. And a recommendation of a student who is preparing the examination only for the sake of preparation will not go on to go well with a student who is really serious about qualifying the examination. That's one part. So, every candidate has a niche book. Every candidate has a niche form of preparation. And that is what they require to follow. Second is, there is no such thing as the best book. No one qualifies ever by studying any best book. For that matter, there is nothing best in the world at all. Best is an absolutist term, it's a judgmental word, and one should always refrain from using this word and building a perception also on the basis of this word. So there is nothing called as best book, there is nothing like a best teacher, there is nothing like a best anything of sorts. Everyone qualifies by utilizing whatever they have in the best possible manner. Now this is a much better expression. Books may be the same, but the gains that one goes on to be having from these books goes on to be completely different. The approach towards understanding it also goes on to be different with respect to different type of candidate. The grasping power of the candidate goes on to be different, and consequently, the books will go on to help them only to a limited extent. Same book can be studied by 5 candidates, and 5 candidates, all of them will go on to have a different type of an analytical base and a different type of a knowledge base that they will go on to build it up. A candidate has to make himself best to utilize the book and in the best possible manner in the best possible time. It is not the book that is the best, it is the candidate who is the best. The third is, always look for a variety of books in the bookshop. Never follow the advice of the bookseller blindly. Remember, The basic interest of the bookseller is to sell you to make a profit. He is not accountable for your success. For any mistake that you make, the bookshop owner may not take any accountability at any point of time at all. Good students are like explorers. They are like travelers. They must explore and must travel more and more in order to reach their destination. A good book must generally have some characteristics. In the sense that it is these characteristics that a student requires to understand. The destination for a candidate is to reach to a good book according to his or her choice, according to his or her intelligence level, according to his or her level of analysis. So the basic characteristic of a good book will going to include, first, a good book has very good compilation of chapters and diversity of content and explanation within chapters. We repeat it, a very good compilation of chapters and diversity of content and explanation. Such type of books are a bit bulky. So what? Students generally go on to look for books that are going to be thin. Now when they are thin, then the diversity will be missing. What the student should go on to look for is whether on one chapter everything imaginable in the world is going to be given in that chapter or not. Is it that that chapter goes on to cover every perspective possible? Is it that the chapter goes on to have all the type of contents possible? Is it that the chapter goes on to have all the type of diagrams that is possible? Is it that that the chapter will go on to comprise of every type of information content that is going to be possible? And is it that the chapter will go on to be arranging itself in such a manner as to make its explanation very, very open, very, very wide? So if a chapter is going to be written in such a manner, then the book is bound to become bulky, the chapter is bound to become bulky. Now if the student is going to look for something like that is very, very short and crisp, then maybe some 40%, 50%, 80% of the material doesn't going to get imbibed in the chapter at all. The chapter may be short, but that can go on to play with the career of the student. The second thing that the candidate have to look for is that the organization of the chapters and the structure of the write-up. Now, organization of the chapter and structure of the write-up means, take an example. Again, we come to urban problems. If there is a chapter on urban problems, is it that the chapter goes on to begin with what is an urban problem, by definition of an urban problem, saying that urban problem is a product of a problem, or urban problem is a cause of the problem, or urban problem is in the nature of the problem. Any book that will go on to define these three components is bound to become bulky to begin with. Second is, what are the type of urban problems? Third is, what are the causes of urban problems? That will again go on to get itself divided into many components, like it will go on to get divided into environmental problems, social problems, psychological problems, infrastructure problems, etc. Then the fourth component will be, how is it that these urban problems can be solved? The fifth can be, what are the steps that the government has taken to solve these problems? And maybe the seventh will be, that is, what have been the recent initiatives that have been taken, including smart cities, for the purpose of solving this problem. If the candidate goes on to encounter all of these components in a book in a structured and organized manner, then that means that the chapter is well written. The third is the honesty of the content and its presentation. Of course, presentation is significant because that will go on to help the candidates get himself or herself interested in the chapter. Presentation in any case is significant. When you go to look for an institute, the presentation is significant. When you go to look for a person, the presentation and the dress of the person is significant. When you go to look for maybe even a food in a 5-star hotel, the presentation in this case is going to be different. So the candidate have to look for two things. First is how honest is the presentation? Is it that in order to attract the students, the chapters have been condensed, a lot of information has been obliterated and eliminated, and that its presentation has been made in such a manner that the chapter is only half cooked. Now, having talked about the three components, it is always advisable that the student should never shy away from buying bulky books. You never know from which analysis and from which chapter, from which sentence a question can be asked, and that can go to make a difference in your overall concept, and that can go to become the difference in whether you qualify or not. A student should never shy away from reading new books, as every new book, not a guide. We are not talking about guide. We said there is guides are different. Guides are something of a low grade, while books are going to be, we are referring to textbooks. And we are always saying that a student should never shy away from reading new textbooks that goes on to get released, because every new release goes on to be improvement over the previous book. Now, this is something that the student is going to lose sight of. That is, it's like every new model of a car is an improvement over the previous one. Every new car that comes into the market is going to be an improvement over the other car. And every new book that also comes into the market, there is going to be improvement over the previous books that are going to be existing in the market. Leaders always read good books in the sense that they go on to find a new book. They don't go on to go by the rumors that a book is good or not, and so on. Rumors are for conventional people, while for leaders there are no rumors at all. Books are not in popularity context, and generally the books that are the best books, they're always going to remain hidden from the masses, because the masses will never going to like those books. Because the best books are the ones that are not a part of a popularity contest like teachers. Like teaching is not a popularity contest. In a similar manner, books also don't want to be part of a popularity contest. And you just going to think yourself, if you actually going to get hold of a very good book, which is among your peer group, 6 or 7 people not going to know, you'll never refer them. Largely because, not because that your intent is bad, but because it's a mischief. And students are always going to be good when they are mischievous in nature. Of course, the other person will go on to bloom his personality to an extent that will start, he or she will start looking for it. You must also understand that UPSC always frames its question, ask these questions from more and more novel sources rather than from beaten sources. And by the time the students realize that these are the sources from which the questions have been stopped, questions have stopped being asked, then it's too late, because by that time the students have lost a good amount of time. Like after some time, some subjects become old. In the same manner, some books also going to become old for the Union Public Service Commission. A student should always remember that having 2 or 3 extra books on a subject will not go on to harm the interest of the student. You yourself think, what is more important? Maybe that you have bought out of your generosity or out of enthusiasm some 20 extra books. They may be worth not more than 5,000 rupees. Is it that 5,000 rupees are significant, or is it that those books are significant, or 5,000 rupees are significant, or the entire of the career is significant? If wasting 5,000 rupees goes on to help anyone to build a 35 years of a career and goes on to build an enormous, beautiful prospect for the candidate, then wasting 5,000 rupees is a very good gamble. One must always go on to do that. Buying books is a type of investment. And this is an investment that the students must make in himself or herself. Maybe that one book is worth only 1 chapter. And if the students invest rupees, a good amount of money in reading only 1 chapter, maybe only 1 conclusion, and 1 conclusion goes on to help them get 5 extra marks, that's worth investing. It's really, really worth investing. You just have to experiment with it. If you go on to be having 3 books, 5 books on one single topic, you just keep on flipping through the pages, and then you're going to find for 1 chapter the book is going to be very good, but for the rest of them it's not so. It's still worth. This is largely because nothing is more worthy than your career. Nothing is more worthy than the time that you're going to be spending, and nothing is more worthy than the damage that you can go to do to your psyche. So it's your psyche that is the most important asset for you, for your family, for this entire society, and more importantly for the country as a whole. This is largely because you are an asset for the country, and you must remember that you are an asset. You shouldn't going to allow yourself to be vested in such a manner. Always remember, the choice of books is a reflection of your personality. The choice of books should not and never be guided by your herd mentality. Once anyone follows a herd mentality, the progress stops there and then. Herd mentality is not for leaders. You are going to become a leader, whereby you will go on to take the entire district along with yourself, an entire department with yourself. And this is the first step for you, choosing a book. Also remember, not to be fooled by some mischievous coaches who are going to be publishing their notes. Notes can never be a substitute for books at all. Never ever. This is largely because books are different, notes are different, guides are different, keys are different, all of them going to be different from each other. And from that perspective, you must go on to know the difference between textbook, a reference book, guidebook, key, and a notes. Reference books are those books that you want to refer only sometime, off and on. Maybe that you don't like to have some reference book, but you must go to have it because you're going to get an idea, you're going to have a query at one point of a time, and you don't go on to get to know how to solve that query. Then that goes on to become a squib, damp squib in your preparation of examination. So reference books are must, because reference books will go on to help you rouse your curiosity there and then itself. As we go on to say, the biggest wisdom is your curiosity. If you are able to manage your curiosity, it's very, very good. And that can be managed through reference books. Second is going to be textbooks. Now textbooks are those that are going to present a chapter very, very systematically. This is why they are going to be called as textbooks. They are conventional and non-conventional as well. The basic idea behind a textbook is that what the textbook's going to do is that they're going to pick up a chapter and they're going to present the chapter in its entire totality, in its complete totality. That is the advantage of a textbook. So much so that you don't have to look for anything else beyond that type of a chapter. Guidebooks are those that will only going to help you guide. They're going to give you a direction. They're only going to give you a direction. See, this is what you have to study. Whether you understand from guidebooks or not, it doesn't matter. You'll be able to understand a lot of things from the textbooks, largely because the language of the textbooks are expanded. They are very, very different. Well, in guidebooks, that's not so. Guidebooks will going to give you a lot of things, maybe in a point form of sorts. A key will be nothing like a question answer form. It's like a kunji. That means you have one question and you're going to be getting one answer of sorts. The quality of the answer, the accountability of these answers has no meaning at all. And the last is, the lowest in the hierarchy is going to be notes. Notes can be something like someone's class notes. It can be some student's class notes as well. And when you going to study certain type of notes of this type, then you don't know with what type of a thinking that they may have written these notes, but you still going to keep on following it. It is generally very, very difficult to put yourself into the shoes of that person who may have prepared the notes only for himself or herself. My notes can't be yours. And it's not that by studying a notes you will going to become an IAS officer of sorts. Otherwise, all of those people who have made good notes, and then they had a younger brother or a sister, and then they had 2 or 3 more younger brothers and sisters, then if one would have qualified, all the other would have qualified, because the notes have been so good in general. So it's not that notes are actually always going to help you. Sometimes, maybe sometimes, in some manner, they can go on to aid you to understand the dimensions of the topic. But you always understand, books will always be important. Why? Because books going to be having a language. Books going to be having an explanation. Books are original. Books go on to be having a presentation in such a manner that they're going to cultivate your interest. Guides are not concerned with it. And moreover, now, books are concerned with in-depth analysis of the topic. Books are very extensive and they are catering to a syllabus, but they will go to touch all the peripheral aspects as well, which may not be in your syllabus, but they are going to be very, very, very helpful. Guides are more precise to the syllabus. They cover the entire dimension in short. However, guides are only a material compilation, and because they are a material compilation taken from one book, second book, third book, fourth book, they are very, very disjointed, and the use of the linking sentences between one chapter and another chapter, between one point and another point, may not be necessarily present there. Forget about necessarily present, they are not at all present there. The students who go on to start preparing their examination by a study of guide are always going to be disjointed like guide itself, because they are not able to coagulate all the ideas and not able to correlate it. Notes are very raw compilation, and it adheres to someone's thinking and his or her organization of thought. No one qualifies by studying someone's notes. No one has qualified and no one will qualify. This is largely because notes will go to help you. Someone's notes maybe in the last stages of your preparation, when you are completely prepared, and then you come across someone else's notes, and then you realize that, well, you require to organize your thoughts in certain manner, or maybe that an input will go on to help you arrange your thoughts in a somewhat different manner. In all of these type of notes, you're going to be having your answers in a point-wise form. Point-wise form and unidimensional form don't going to help you to organize your thinking at all. And when you don't have your thinking organized, there is no way that you can actually go on to think of qualifying for this examination. This examination is actually not qualified by people who go on to be like masses. That's the basic reason that out of 1 lakh who go on to give an examination, only something like some 5 or 6 or maybe 10 or 15 of them going to qualify. And maybe out of something like a crowd of some 5 or 6 lakh, only 2,000 maximum go on to qualify for this examination. There must be some reason behind it. Thus, notes are a raw compilation. They adhere to someone's thinking or his or her organization of thought, and the answers are mostly given in a unidimensional and point-wise manner. These things are not always going to be helpful for a candidate. Maybe in the last stage of preparation, they may go to come in handy. It is under these circumstances that we are going to suggest for a guided preparation. Guided preparation, that means that the student should go on to deposit himself or herself in the front of a guide, in front of a coaching institute, in front of maybe any type of an online course, and so on. Even a guided preparation must always go on to begin from commanding the basics. Optional level studies can never be handled without having a complete command over the basics at all. So basics are a must. After the basics, the students required to proceed systematically with every section. It is advisable that the students proceed with simpler topics, gradually moving towards complex topics. For example, we're going to suggest that the students must go on to pick up from a human geography section rather than from physical geography section, because physical geography section goes on to require a lot of imagination. They're going to require a lot of complex concepts to be imbibed, and interrelationship of many factors, that is science, physics, chemistry, geology, maybe geography, everything into it. Different sections of geography go on to be having their own limitations and their own going to be positivity associated with it. And this is the way that we're going to say that they can go to be prepared very, very well in this case. For example, if someone goes on to picking up geomorphology, then the nature of geomorphology is going to be very, very different from that of the nature of climatology. As the candidates have gone on to prepare their basics and they have started moving towards complex topics, they need to understand the basic nuances associated with each and every section of geography. For example, they are required to know about the nature of geomorphology, climatology, oceanography, biogeography, and so on. Why is it significant? Is because Once the candidate happens to know what is the nature of geomorphology, what exactly is contribution to examination, what can be the preparation strategy that can be applied to it, what can be the possible books that can be recommended, although the student will going to get a complete list of books that have been already given to them on their site and their basic information brochure that they're going to be seeing on their site. What exactly can be the role of notes and how is it that they can go to attempt an answer. That will go to make it complete. I repeat it. For every section, the student need to know the nature of the section, the contribution it can go to have in the examination, its preparation strategy, that's the third. Fourth is, what can be the books that can be recommended in general, how is it that the notes can be made out of it, and how is it that an answer can be written for them. To begin with, geomorphology is one of the sections that have been picked up from geology. It's scientific, it is 100% scientific if it is studied in a logical manner, although it can be studied in a geographical manner as well. And imagine both of them are different. Geographical approach is different and logical and scientific approach happen to be different. Geography as the subject means geography. Graphy is description. And when you go to give a description, the description does not always require to be logical in nature. While what the civil services examination requires is that you must be very, very logical and positive in its approach. So, geomorphology, which is a derivative from general geology, is factual, is conceptual, and in general, the variety of type of concepts associated with geomorphology are very, very difficult to imagine. It's a section with which geography goes on to begin with, and it's a blue-blooded segment for the geographers because they have a tendency to ask from these segments. The contribution of this section to examination is going to be about 30 to 40 marks in the first paper because it's a part of first paper. But at the same time, it also goes on to be contributing significantly to general studies paper 1 and also to general studies PT also to the tune of 4 to 6 questions. To prepare for geomorphology, the preparation strategy that is required is going to be, first, candidate must go on to strengthen the basics, very, very, very solid in their basics they must be. Then they must go on to learn how to draw diagrams because there is no way that geomorphology can be studied without diagrams. The third is, in the course of preparation of geomorphology, they will go on to encounter no less than something like some 600, 700 new type of terminologies. So they must be having a grasping power for these 600 different terminologies, and they can go on to gain it only when they have a concept backing them up with it. The general books that are going to be recommended will be those books that are going to be contemporary, because in geomorphology a lot of new things keep on coming. And in general, geography books don't go on to be comprising these contemporary components. The student will never come to know of it, largely because when they're going to be getting their marks, they will never come to know for what reason they have not got marks. But then for everything, take an example, plate tectonics. With respect to plate tectonics, there is always some type of new development that is taking place. And how is it that plate tectonics will go on to explain the formation of a transform fault will be found only in a new book. It will not go on to be found in any older book of sorts. That means any book that is going to be geographical in nature. It has to be scientific, it has to be logical, it has to be very, very, very diagrammatic. Now, in general, such type of books go on to be, they will be scientific in nature and they are going to be loaded with terminologies. Now, this shouldn't go on to discourage the students or dissuade the students from not studying this topic, because that is the basic nature of the subject. From a perspective of having studied any book, having studied these books and the books that have been recommended to them, they will be getting something like some 12 to 13 books from their organization for these things. they must go on to organize their thought and represent their thought in the form of something like notes. Now, notes are nothing but whatever the candidates have studied, the same thing that they go on to represent it in the form of some write-up. That is what we're going to be calling it by the name of notes. This is the structure of the thought that they have had. And these notes must go on to have a good amount of illustrations as well. It is these notes that have to be expanded in the form of an answer writing as well. And the most important difficulty that the student will go on to face in answer writing is going to be ability to adapt to the use of different type of technicalities and technical language. It cannot be written in this manner that plates are very hard rocks, plates are very hard bodies, and plates go on to keep on moving each other, and they are not able to bend themselves. The same thing is going to be put in a technical manner. That is, plates have a very high degree of flexural rigidity, or they are unable to bend or flex in exceptional circumstances only when the flexural rigidity is going to be very high. And that goes on to become technical. So of course there is no crime in writing in a simple manner, but when you go to write in a simple manner, then the number of words that you're going to use, that goes on to increase in number. And that goes on to present a difficulty for the candidates in constructing the number of words. Climatology is different from that of geomorphology in the sense that while geomorphology was both factual as conceptual, climatology is 100% conceptual, 100% imaginative, and 100% observation based. It's different from geomorphology not only in the sense that it is not so much factual, although there will be one or two chapters there will be. For example, climatic classifications will be factual. Out of climatology, so again some 30 to 40 marks are going to be asked in paper 1, and some 15 to 20 marks of GSA in paper, in the first paper. And something like some 20 to 30 marks of questions are going to be asked in GS paper 1, while some 2 or 3 questions can be asked in their general studies PT as well. Climatology is conceptual, imaginative, and observation based. It's like no other section. There is no section in geography that is as conceptual, imaginative, or observation based. Its examination significance is that 30 to 40 marks is always going to be asked from in paper 1, while in general studies contribution goes on to be to the tune of a minimum of 3 to 4 questions in a prelims examination, and something like some 15 to 20 marks worth of questions that are also going to be in general studies paper 1. The best way to prepare for climatology is always going to be strengthening of the basics, and the basics lies in the physics. There is always going to be, for the purpose of preparation, there is always going to be a scientific choice between climatology and a study of it from a meteorological viewpoint. When the subject is studied from a geographical viewpoint, then there are causative aspects are absent. And when the subject is studied from a scientific viewpoint, then the causative aspects are very, very, very much present in that place. The notes that the students have to prepare in this case is going to be in the form of a flow chart, because they have to make a sequence of it. That's why flow charts are important and significant. It's not going to be the same type of notes that the student is going to prepare what they're going to prepare for geomorphology. So flow charts in this case will go on to be pretty important, and this is something that the students will require to learn. Of course, the structure of the topic is going to be important. While writing answers in climatology, the one part that has to be kept in mind that the language has to be simple, mixed with interspersed and mixed with concepts and terms. Oceanography is a mixture of geomorphology and climatology, both of them. So it goes on to have the nature of both of them. It is worth 20 to 30 marks in paper 1. It's hardly relevant in GS except for the fact that is one question was asked in 2015 that was on ocean currents. So one can expect one question can be asked, and hardly significant for general studies PT also. This is a section that is best studied only after having studied geomorphology and climatology, because the concepts of geomorphology and climatology will be very much part of it. The notes that the students have to prepare in this case, it can be geographical, it can be logical, or it can be scientific also, with some degree of a structure. The structure in this place, in this place is going to be significant. Why? The answer writing in this case will go on to become completely different, in the sense that it will go to be comprising of the components from both, that is geomorphology as well as climatology. Biogeography and environmental geography, both of them go on to be by and large of the same nature. They are factual, conceptual, analytical, and contemporary in nature. And this is the most important section from general studies, because almost every year 20 to 30 questions from biogeography and environmental geography, that is ecology environment, is going to be asked. It's going to be as significant in GS paper 1. It is going to be equally significant in GS paper 3 as well for general studies. While for the paper 1 of geography option, it is significant to the tune of some 20 to 30 marks also. And this is a section that has to be integrated with GS. It has to be studied only after geomorphology and climatology, because only then it can be best understood. It has to be integrated with GSA and integrated with observational and current affairs learning as well. Because when we're going to be talking about observational current affairs learning, then we are talking about imbibing a lot of things from the newspapers, from the magazines as well. The students have to prepare almost like 3 different type of notes for that. First is structured. The second is a flow chart. Flow chart, for example. If the student is preparing something on ozone hole, then what is ozone hole? How does it form? So how does it form in a sequential manner? That means first stage, the second stage, the third stage, the fourth stage, and so on. That's why a flow chart is going to be required. And the third is a fragmentary form of notes on different pages on different type of topics. For example, maybe a new discovery has come up on ozone, maybe a new discovery has come up on biodiversity, maybe something new has come on forestry schemes, then the students must keep on attaching these things. There's another thing that the student can go to do. If they have prepared a notes, then they must go on to have enough amount of a space on the notes so that they keep on writing over it and keep on updating it. Keep on writing, keep on updating it. Now, this is a section that requires, for the purpose of answer writing, a great amount of maneuverability of the language, because the questions can be asked in the form that is, what were the shortcomings of the Kyoto Protocol and how is it that the Paris Conference have been improvement over it? The questions can be asked in the form that is, what have been the basic limitations of some type of soil and soil conserving methods, and how is it that jute coverage of the region will go on to help in tiding over certain type of soil conservation measures. Now, this is something that can be studied only from the perspective of an analytical language. In human geography section, perspective in human geography is very, very theoretical, highly interpretive, involves a lot of memorization, and it is one topic that is studied in a very, very specialized manner. It is one of these topics that was present in almost each and every section in 2015. Now, not exactly that it is going to happen every time, but then this is also not to be lost sight of. Its preparation strategy has to be that one has to be very, very, very good in order to answer questions from perspective human geography. They have to be very good conceptually, linguistically, and philosophically. Very, very good. Now, this sets the entire section completely different from the rest of the section of human geography. For the rest of the section of human geography, a simple, easy strategy is going to be applied with respect to all of them, be it economic geography, be it population geography, be it models and theories, or be it regional planning, all of them. And how is it so? It is because As far as the nature is concerned, all of them go economic geography, population geography, settlement geography, laws, tourism models, regional planning. They are going to have same nature. They are easy, very practical, very contemporary. The difficulties with respect to them is that they need a very, very good command over language, and the questions that are going to be asked on there are going to be of a twisted nature. Their contribution to examination is that in general studies they do contribute to an extent of some 20 to 30 marks. Something like some question can be asked on why is it that Dubai can be an aviation hub? That is economic geography. The causes and migration, that can be from population geography. The strategy for code periphery model, that can again be in GS in some way. So it doesn't go on to cover a major section of GS, but it still goes on to be a section to be contended with. The preparation strategy in this case is that one has to develop analytical power and capability. Unless one has an analytical power and capability, it is very, very, very difficult to answer questions out of it, because the questions are of a very twisted nature. The students have to be abreast of every recent development to write some contemporary answers, because they need to know about anything that is happening anywhere in the world on that topic. This is the type of a strategy that has to be applied. So for economic geography, it goes on to apply as much as it goes on to be for certain things like regional planning. For example, what can be a regional development strategy for some place like that of Vietnam? This is something that can go to happen. That can be asked as well. So first paper was divided into 4 sections by and large. One comprising of geomorphology, climatology and oceanography, which were conceptual, factual as well as analytical, while biogeography and the environmental geography was very, very analytical, very contemporary and very current based. Perspective in geography was very theoretical, very philosophical, while the 4th section, that is economic geography, population geography, regional planning, was going to be easy, contemporary in nature, and it was one of these topics that required a very, very practical and contemporary applicable approach. The whole of Indian geography is going to be divided into 2 sections now, because Indian geography is a replica, it's a reflection of certain topics in the first paper. The physical setting of geography is the same as that of geomorphology, climatology and oceanography combined, in the sense that it is conceptual, scientific, factual and very mark fetching. Of course, to prepare it, you require a very, very good command over physical geography. The answer writing and the strategy that has to be followed by the candidates in this case is that they have to be very, very physical geography and imagination oriented in this case. That is about physical geography. That means physical geography is the manifestation of the whole of the first paper or first section of the first paper. While for the rest of Indian geography, everything lies the same. The nature of the topics, whether it is resources, agriculture, industry, transport, cultural setting, settlement, regional planning, political aspects and contemporary issues goes on to be the same. And that is easy, descriptive, contemporary and very helpful in GS. Plus it is insightful as well. The problem with these topics is that the material is not generally available. The students do go on to find a problem in answering questions, because the questions can be drawn from anywhere. They can be general studies based, they can be geography based, or they can be based from anything. It essentially goes on to test in the candidates, where the candidates go on to be having an observation power that is so good whether the candidate will be able to answer questions if some 5 or 6 sections are going to be correlated. Consequently, every candidate has to develop analytical power and capability. They have to be very abreast of the recent developments to write contemporary answers. And unless they are going to be correlative, there is no way that they can go to write answers. Meaning that the whole section of geography, with respect to its nature, with respect to strategy, with respect to answer writing can be divided into 4 sections. One comprising of physical geography oriented, that goes into comprise geomorphology, climatology, oceanography, biogeography, environmental geography and India physical setting. One. Second is going to be perspective in geography, and the third is going to be whole of Indian geography. The fourth is going to be all those sections that are going to be general studies oriented. The questions that are going to be asked from them are going to be, no one knows whether they are going to be of general studies or whether they are going to be from geography. These 20 sections of geography all in all going to comprise 257 chapters, 257 topics. Anyone who is willing to take geography as a subject for civil services examination may go on to have a heart attack at taking a look at the number of the topics. Now there is no way that anyone can go to escape from not studying these topics also. Now that's the place where a guidance goes on to help the candidates. It may seem initially that there are going to be 257 topics all in all, but with the help of a cluster approach, these topics will be reduced to almost 1/5 of what they are. Now this is a trick. This is a trick, and if the students can go on to plan, and if they can go on to follow a plan of studying the topic in such a manner that instead of studying 257 chapters, they will study 257 chapters, but it will be structured in a manner that it will go on to be almost something like some 70 or 80 chapters only. How it can be done? You will go on to find this analysis taking place from the screen. This approach is what we are going to be calling it by the name of cluster approach. That is, this approach is all about picking up one chapter, picking up one topic, picking up several topics, and bunching all the related topics into one. So that if you are studying continental drift, you must study plate tectonics, must study volcanism, must study tsunami, must study mountain building, must study India's mountain building activities and the formation of Himalayas, must study India's physiography. So 7 chapters, 8 chapters. If you're going to study in a fragmented form, that will going to become very big. But the moment you're going to study in a coagulated manner, agglomerative manner, what we talked about in the beginning, is going to be a real easy task. Just follow the screen. What exactly is cluster approach, and how is it that we intend to follow that? Take an example of cluster approach. There is a chapter in geomorphology, earth movements, endogenetic and exogenetic forces. Other topics which are related to this topic are factors affecting landforms, sea floor spreading and isostasy. The related topics found in paper 2 under contemporary issues are going to be landslide and earthquakes. That means if someone goes on to study factors affecting landform or endogenetic and exogenetic factors, and they do not go on to study landslides and earthquakes, then their topic is not going to be complete. They have to pick up earth movements, endogenetic factors, exogenetic factors, factors affecting landform, sea floor spreading, isostasy, landslide and earthquake, so that the entire of these 5 and 6 chapters combined go on to become one very large chapter, and the effort of the candidate is reduced. In a similar manner, you go on to find one chapter in geomorphology and how interrelated cluster approach can go on to be helpful. These topics can be continental drift, plate tectonics, mountain building, volcanism, earthquake and tsunami. The topics of paper 2 which are related to these areas are going to include evolution of Himalayas, earthquake in India, tsunami in India, and the structure and physical features of India. Now, we explain it in different manner. If a candidate goes on to study continental drift separately, earthquake separately, then the total effort that they are going to be making to study these two topics is going to be by and large the same as the amount of effort that they will going to make to study 10 topics. Because if these chapters are going to be separated away, then the amount on effort is going to be something. But if they are going to be coagulated together, it is going to become very, very easy. For example, plate tectonics will in any case going to include all the models of mountain building: continent-continent collision, continent-ocean collision, ocean-ocean collision, and Himalayas went on to evolve because of continent-continent collision. Tsunamis in India will going to evolve because of ocean-ocean collision. And physical features and structure of India will going to talk about the evolution of the Himalayas, the structure of the Himalayas, as well as the earthquakes. So these topics are so correlated that you just going to consider that there is going to be one topic, and continental drift, plate tectonics, mountain building, volcanism go on to be the subtopics of this section. That is what we're going to be calling it by the name of cluster approach. The same cluster approach, as you're going to find on your screen, has been given to you in the form of section, internal links, external chapter link, and links in paper 2 and 3, and you will be able to make an analysis of it, what exactly it is. We have picked up one example. We're going to pick up second example, that is in climatology. As you're going to see in your screen, in climatology you have topics like jet stream, temperate cyclones, tropical cyclones, and climatic classification. Now, if anyone is studying all of these 4 topics together, then they have to study in India physical aspect, western disturbance, tropical cyclone, and climatic classification together. So these 4 topics and these 3 topics goes on to include 7 topics, but 7 topics taken together will go on to be as small as only 3 topics all in all. Now, picking up an example somewhere from environmental geography, as you're going to take a look at it. In environmental geography, the topics can go to be biodiversity, ecosystem management, and environmental management. Now, when anyone is studying a topic of biodiversity, then from Indian geography, they must go on to study forest resources, biotic resources, wildlife resources, because they are all part of biodiversity. And in contemporary issues, topics like deforestation, desertification, environmental pollution, because these are the problems in biodiversity conservation. So, in any case, the candidate will have to study in biodiversity some of the problems in biodiversity like deforestation, desertification. But you go on to extend it slightly, then you go on to get a hold of no less than 3 topics in environmental geography, 3 topics in India's resources, and 3 topics in contemporary issues. There is 9 topics altogether, and that is amounting to a study of only 3 topics. So by studying 3 topics, you go on to prepare yourself for 9 different type of topics. Such type of a cluster approach has been given to you in a different type of ways, in variety of ways. For that is going to be for first paper as well as for second paper. You're going to pick up another topic that is going to be for second paper. That is going to be on Indian agriculture. So on Indian agriculture, you have topics like irrigation, green revolution, dryland farming. Now the base topic for that will be sustainable development, agriculture productivity, dryland development, meaning that if you are studying irrigation and you are not studying dryland development, agriculture productivity, then your topic is not going to be complete. If you are studying dryland farming and you are not studying sustainable development, drought and drought prone area program, then that is a wastage. Imagine the extension of dryland farming is always going to be in the form of a sustainable development. It's going to be in the form of drought and a desert development program. It is always going to be in the form of desertification and watershed as a policy. Now it is this cluster approach that we go on to be talking of. If you're going to take in a somewhat different manner, that is the list of important interlinked topics from paper 1, then in geomorphology you go on to find topics like we have talked about before as well, but to repeat it for your convenience: continental drift, plate tectonics, mountain building, volcanism, earthquake and tsunami. So in contemporary issues in India physical aspect, there are going to be some topics like India physical aspects, evolution of Himalayas, evolution of basalts, earthquake in India, tsunami in India. Well, this new paradigm in the form of cluster approach is introduced to make geography preparation more easy and adaptable. If the aspirants follow this approach, no doubt they will be directed towards the right path of success. There won't be any problems with their preparation level at all. Now we come to the last component of it. Entire of the course will be lecture based, it can be chroma based, or it can be a form of panel discussion. Lecture based can be, there will be a PowerPoint presentation and all of these points will be explained. Chroma based will be those where there will be a lecture and in the backdrop of it there will be some events taking place. For example, if the topic is about volcanism, then the volcanic activity will keep on taking place behind the back, and with the help of the diagrams and other things, there will be certain things that will be shown in the chroma. And the last is going to be in the form of panel discussion. Some of these topics that are going to be too easy will go on to involve some people who will go on to be part of the panel. There will be very prominent people in this field, and there will be anchor who will go on to manage this, asking questions to 4 of these panel members. It will be almost like that of an interview. Now this is to make the topic very interactive, very graspable as well. On certain type of topics, a simple class, a mundane type of a class on a whiteboard or a blackboard will not be very helpful. The materials that the students will be going to be getting is going to be of 3 types. One is books, second is going to be short smart study, and the third is for every topic they will be going to be having a synopsis, the summary of the topic. That means they have to just listen and they don't have to write a lot of things. It will be a paperless class of sorts. And these things are going to be given to the students in the beginning itself. In the beginning, the moment they have taken admission, they will be given these things. The best way to utilize the class will be essentially to keep pace with the class. That means whatever that is being taught in the class, if the students go on to come prepared with the topic, that will go on to help them enormously in that. Then after the topic, of course, there are going to be some problem solving sessions. These problem solving sessions will be, as you can go into contact with your organization, they will go on to let you know what are the timings for different type of sections, and they'll keep on taking place off and on. And there will be very organized sessions. That means the program is under ask anything under the sun that is possible, and this is something that you can go on to ask any type of a question, any type of a query that you're going to be having with respect to that. The students will be giving some assignments which they have to write, and they can go to submit it to the organization, and then they will go on to get a model answer on that topic, and they will go on to get some suggestions as to how to improve that assignment. These assignments are not going to be analogous to that of a test. They will be essentially to test the candidates that given a free hand, how well is it that they can go to write about the topic. That is all that one can go to say about the introductory class, about the first class, about the beginning class, and thereafter you'll go on to get a routine which will go on to keep on following it one by one, and so on. That's how the entire of the course is planned.